to Deep Sleep Stories. If these stories have helped you through restless nights, please leave a review. Reviews are what help this podcast grow, reach more listeners, and stay alive. Without them, even something meaningful can slowly disappear. So if this show has brought you comfort, that small act truly helps keep it going. Now, settle in, and let's begin.
Welcome to Deep Sleep Stories, where the day can soften at the edges and gently fade away. Tonight, you'll drift into a dreamy tale of stars resting on the sea, shimmering like lanterns on quiet water. Settle in just as you are and let your body find the most comfortable way to be held. Let your shoulders loosen, the tiny muscles around your eyes relax, your jaw unclench as if it's remembering how to be light. If it feels good, take a slow breath in through your nose, as though you're sipping in cool evening air, and then let it out gently like a sigh that doesn't need to explain anything. You might imagine that you're lying somewhere safe, somewhere dim and peaceful. The room around you is calm and the air is soft. Perhaps there's the faint hush of distant waves in your mind, a sound that asks nothing of you. With each breath you can let go of a little more of what you are carrying. Loose thoughts can drift by like small clouds, moving across a wide night sky, never needing to stay. Now picture a shoreline at night. Not a dramatic shore, not a stormy one, just a quiet coast where the sea arrives and retreats with patient kindness. The sand is cool, the air is mild, and the horizon is a gentle line. Above, the sky is deep and velvety, filled with starlight. Below, the water is dark and glassy, reflecting that same starlight as if the ocean has its own private heavens. As you continue to breathe, your awareness can widen and soften. You don't have to follow every detail. You can simply float, letting the images arrive like a lullaby. And when you're ready, the story can carry itself. Not around you, but near you, like a warm lantern set beside your bed. Somewhere along that quiet coast in a small seaside village built from pale stone and weathered wood, there lived a person who loved the night sea for its gentleness. Her name was Elowen, and she moved through life the way a cat moves through moonlight, unhurried, attentive, at peace with silence. Elowen's cottage sat on a low rise above the beach, where wind-polished grasses bowed and lifted with each slow breath of the ocean. Her windows were often open, even after dusk, so the hush of the waves could wander in. On her table, there were simple things: a smooth bowl of sea glass, a candle with a soft scent of salt and herb, and a small brass telescope that looked as though it had been loved for years. She wasn't a sailor in the bold, swashbuckling way stories sometimes insist upon. She didn't chase distant storms or shout into the wind. Elowen was something quieter, a keeper of small errands and gentle traditions, a listener to the shoreline's murmurs. By day, she mended nets and helped neighbors, carried baskets of bread, collected driftwood for the hearth. But at night, when the village lamps dimmed and the last conversation softened behind closed doors, she stepped out onto the sand and looked toward the water, as if it were an old friend waiting to share a secret. The villagers had their own way of speaking about the sea after sunset. They said it wore the stars like jewelry. They said it borrowed the sky and returned it by morning. And sometimes, if the night was clear and the tide was kind, they whispered something stranger, something that sounded like a fairy tale told in a voice too calm to be untrue. They said the sea gathered fallen starlight. It wasn't said with fear. It was said with wonder, the way one might speak about a hidden garden that blooms only in moonlight. Children would ask if the stars could really fall, and elders would smile and answer without hurrying. Stars did not fall like stones, they explained. They drifted. They softened. They let go of their brightness in tiny, gentle fragments. And those fragments sometimes found their way to the ocean, where the water cradled them instead of letting them vanish. Elowen didn't know if every part of that was true. She didn't need to. It was enough to feel the way the night sea shimmered, not with harsh glare, but with a quiet glow that seemed to come from within. Some evenings, the surface looked as if it were dusted with silver. Other nights, the water held steady darkness like ink. And then, just when the eyes stopped trying too hard, small lights would appear, delicate as fireflies, moving slowly in the currents. On the night the story truly began, the air was especially calm. The village had grown quiet early, as if even human voices wanted to rest. A pale crescent moon hung above the water, thin and serene, while the sky behind it was crowded with stars. Elowen stepped outside with a shawl around her shoulders and a small lantern in her hand, not because she needed it, but because its warm amber glow felt companionable, like bringing a cup of tea into a dark room. She walked down the narrow path toward the beach, her footsteps muffled by grass and sand. The world smelled of salt and clean night air. Somewhere, a night bird called once, then settled. The ocean's rhythm was slow, steady, like a breath that had been practiced for ages. When Elowen reached the shore, she paused. The water was lower than usual, pulled back by the tide, revealing smooth stones that glistened as if they had been polished by the dark. The line where waves reached was thin and gentle. The sea seemed to be waiting, and there, on the surface, just beyond where the water lapped, she saw something that made her chest feel warm and spacious. A small scatter of lights, not sharp like lanterns and not flickering like candles, but steady and soft. They floated on the water as if resting. They were shaped like tiny stars, though not the spiky kind drawn in books. More like little points of glow gathered into clusters, like the ocean had learned to hold constellations in its palm. Elowen stood very still. She didn't want to startle the moment as if it were a shy creature. The lights drifted, nudged by the smallest currents, moving in a slow dance that didn't require music. Each time a wave rolled under them, they rose and fell, as if lulled. She let the lantern's light dim by lowering it near her side. The sea's glow was enough. Her eyes adjusted, and the world became a painting of deep blues and black velvet, touched with silver. The sky above and the water below began to mirror each other so perfectly that it felt as if she were standing at the edge of two heavens. Elowen took a slow breath and stepped closer to the tide line. The water curled toward her feet, kissed the sand, and retreated. Another wave followed, a little brighter now, as if it carried more of that hidden starlight. A thought came to her, not an urgent thought, not something that needed solving, just a gentle curiosity. What would it be like to drift among those sea stars, to be close enough to see how they gleamed, to let the water carry her like a cradle beneath a sky overflowing with quiet light? She had a small boat pulled up higher on the sand, a simple skiff made from pale wood, sturdy and calm. Elowen used it for short trips along the coast, for collecting seaweed after storms, for bringing supplies to a nearby cove. It wasn't grand. It didn't need to be. It was a boat that understood quiet. Without rushing, she walked to it and untied the rope that held it. The rope was smooth from years of hands and salt air. She tugged the skiff down toward the water, the hull whispering against the sand. The sea met it gladly, lifting it with a gentle, buoyant sigh. Elowen stepped in, careful and steady as if she were stepping into a dream she trusted. She set her lantern near the bow, letting it glow low. She took a short oar and pushed away from the shore with an easy motion. The skiff moved forward, sliding over dark water that held the sky's reflection as if it were made of glass. Soon the village behind her became a faint cluster of sleeping lights. The shoreline softened into shadow. The world narrowed into the hush of water and the wide, steady presence of night. As she rowed, the sea stars drifted nearer. At first they seemed like a random scatter, but as Elowen moved among them, patterns revealed themselves. Slow spirals, gentle arcs, a curve like a smile. They didn't hurry, they didn't resist. They simply floated, gliding away if the skiff approached too closely, then circling back when it passed, as if they were curious too. Elowen rested her oar and let the boat drift. The sea was calm enough to hold her still, rocking her with the smallest motion. She leaned over the side and looked down. The lights were not only on the surface. Beneath the water, dimmer glows moved like deep sea lanterns. They rose and fell, sometimes gathering into small clusters, sometimes scattering like seeds carried by a slow wind. The water itself seemed threaded with light, as if the ocean were quietly singing in a language made of shimmer. Elowen dipped her fingers into the sea. The water was cool, but not cold. It embraced her skin and slid away in silky ribbons. When she lifted her hand, droplets clung to her fingertips, and within those droplets, tiny points of light twinkled for a moment before fading. As if returning to the water with a soft sigh, she smiled to herself. There was something intimate and kind about it, as if the sea were saying, yes, you may touch the wonder, you may hold it for a breath, then you may let it go. The skiff drifted farther into the field of sea stars. Above her, constellations blazed in quiet dignity. Below her, the water held its own shifting constellations, looser, dreamier, constantly rearranging. It was easy to forget which way was up. Elowen lay back against the side of the boat, letting her gaze soften. She watched a star reflected in the water tremble with each small ripple. The real star above remained steady, but its watery twin danced. The difference felt like a lesson whispered without words. There are many ways to shine, and none are wrong. For a long time, she simply drifted. The sea rocked, the sky watched. Her thoughts loosened and floated away like small paper boats. She became aware of her own breath, slow and even, in rhythm with the ocean. Then, without any suddenness, something new emerged from the dark. A path of brighter glow, a gentle band of light on the surface, as if the sea stars were gathering to form a trail. Elowen sat up. The band wasn't rigid. It curved softly, inviting rather than commanding. It looked like a pale ribbon laid across the water, shimmering as though woven from moonlight and salt. The skiff was already drifting in that direction, as if the tide had chosen for her. Elowen didn't resist. She placed her hands lightly on the oar and guided herself forward with slow, quiet strokes. The boat moved along the glowing path, and the lights around it seemed to brighten as if pleased to be followed. The farther she went, the more the sea changed. It remained calm, but it felt deeper, older, as though she had crossed an invisible threshold into a place where the ocean remembered myths. The air grew a touch cooler, the sky seemed wider, and the water's glow began to take on subtle shades, silvery blues and soft pearls, like the inside of a shell. Ahead, the path of sea stars led towards something that wasn't quite land and wasn't quite water. At first, Elowen thought it might be a low fog bank, but the air was clear. Then she wondered if it was a sandbar, but it gleamed too softly, too steadily, and it didn't break the surface like sand. As she approached, the shape clarified into a small island, an island that seemed to be made of moonlit stone and sea mist, floating just above the tide. It was not large, not imposing. It looked like the kind of place a secret would choose to live. The sea stars circled it in slow rings, like guardians made of light. Elowen's skiff glided closer, and without any scrape or bump, the boat came to rest beside the island's edge, as if the water had arranged a gentle landing. Elowen stepped out carefully. Her feet met something cool and solid, though it felt softer than rock, as if the island were dreaming of being stone. The surface shimmered faintly beneath her, and when she looked down, she saw tiny points of light embedded in it, like starlight caught in smooth glass. A soft breeze moved across the island, carrying the scent of salt and something floral, like night-blooming jasmine. The air felt soothing, as though it had been waiting for someone to breathe it. In the center of the island, there was a shallow pool. Its water was still, perfectly still, like a mirror held in a steady hand. Around the pool, pale grasses grew in delicate arcs. Their tips glowed faintly, as if brushed by starlight. Elowen approached the pool with quiet reverence. She knelt beside it and looked in. At first she saw her own reflection, softened by the dark, her hair loose around her shoulders, her eyes calm, her face lit by faint glow. Then the reflection changed. The water began to show not her face but the sky. And then something beyond the sky. A depth that felt like a hallway of stars, extending into a gentle infinity. The pool wasn't showing her a place she could point to on a map. It was showing her a feeling, a sensation of being small and safe under a vast, kind night. The pool seemed to gather the world's quietest truths and hold them like pearls at the bottom. Elowen sat back on her heels and listened. At first there was only the hush of the sea around the island. But then she noticed another sound, faint and melodic, like distant chimes, like the softest harp string touched by air. It rose and fell in slow waves, never sharp, never demanding attention. It was a song made for resting. Elowen let her eyes close. She let her hands rest on her knees. She breathed in, and the air felt cool and clean. She breathed out, and the island's stillness seemed to breathe with her. When she opened her eyes again, she saw movement above the pool. A single sea star had lifted from the water and floated into the air. It hovered, gently turning as if it were remembering the shape of itself. Then another rose, and another, until several soft lights floated above the pool like lanterns without strings. They drifted in a slow spiral, and as they turned, they left faint trails of glow, like a ribbon drawn through the night. The trails lingered only briefly before fading, but the motion itself was mesmerizing, a calm dance, a lullaby written in light. Elowen watched, and her mind grew quieter. She felt as if she were being soothed from the inside out, like warm tea spreading through the chest. The sea stars' dance seemed to gather scattered thoughts and smooth them like hands flattening wrinkled cloth. The lights drifted closer to her, and she felt no fear, only a gentle sense of being welcomed. One hovered near her shoulder, so close she could see its glow change subtly, like a living ember breathing in slow rhythm. Another drifted near her hand, and when she lifted her palm, it settled above it without touching, warm but not hot, like sunlight filtered through water. Elowen's breath slowed further. Her eyelids grew heavy. She realized the island wasn't asking her to do anything. It wasn't giving her a task or a message she had to translate. It was simply offering rest, pure, untroubled rest, like an ancient kindness. The sea stars began to drift back toward the pool, lowering themselves into the water as if returning to bed. One by one, they sank beneath the surface, and the pool's mirror grew brighter, filled with soft, floating light. Elowen leaned forward again and looked into the pool. Now the water showed a wide view of the sea at night, but not from where she stood. It was as if she were seeing the ocean from above, watching dark waves cradle countless points of light. The sea stars formed slow-moving constellations that rearranged themselves again and again, never repeating, always gentle. And as she watched, Elowen understood something without needing words. The stars above shone with steady patience. They had their places, their patterns, their long, quiet journeys across the sky. But the stars on the sea, these were the stars that had let go, the stars that had chosen to drift and float and be carried. They were reminders that release could be beautiful too, that surrender could be soft, that it was safe to be held. Elowen's shoulders loosened more, her forehead smoothed. She felt as if the night itself were tucking her in. She sat beside the pool for a long time, letting the island's calm soak into her. At some point she realized she was no longer thinking about the village, or about tomorrow, or about anything beyond the hush of the present moment. There was only the cool air, the gentle glow, the quiet, rocking sensation that seemed to exist even on solid ground, as if the island remembered it was born of water. A breeze stirred the pale grasses, and they leaned together, whispering softly. The sound was like pages turning in a book no one needed to finish. Elowen listened, and her breathing matched the rhythm, slow, easy, unforced. Eventually the pool's glow softened, and the sea stars beneath its surface settled. The music-like chime faded into a nearly silent hum. The island seemed to exhale long and deep, as if saying, "That is enough for now." Elowen rose slowly. She looked around the small island with gratitude, her gaze resting on the faintly glowing grasses, the smooth surface beneath her feet, the calm, dark sea beyond. The sky above was unchanged, still filled with stars, but she felt different, lighter, as if something inside her had unclenched. She stepped back into her skiff with the same gentle care. The boat rocked once, then steadied. The sea, patient and calm, turned her slightly, as if pointing her toward home. Elowen did not row at first. She let the current guide her. The island drifted behind, dissolving into darkness as if it had never been there. Yet the feeling of it remained, an afterglow in her chest, a warmth behind the ribs. The path of sea stars appeared again, faint but clear, like a ribbon laid across the water. Elowen began to row with slow, easy strokes. The oar dipped and lifted, making small circles of ripples that quickly smoothed away. Each movement felt effortless, as if the night itself were doing most of the work. As she traveled, the sea stars floated near her boat again, surrounding it like gentle companions. Their glow reflected on the wooden sides, turning the skiff into a little vessel of light. The village lights in the distance grew slightly clearer, though still soft and sleepy. The air warmed by a whisper. The scent of the shore returned. Sand, salt, faint grass. The familiar rhythm of waves near land became more distinct, like a heartbeat heard through a pillow. By the time Elowen reached the shallows, the sea stars had begun to scatter, drifting back into the open water. Some sank beneath the surface, their glow dimming as if they were closing their eyes. Others floated farther out, merging with the starlit reflection until it was hard to tell where the sky ended and the sea began. Elowen guided the skiff onto the sand. She stepped out, her feet meeting the cool shore. She pulled the boat higher and tied the rope with a quiet, practiced motion. Her lantern had nearly burned down, its light a small ember of warmth. She lifted it and looked back at the ocean. The sea was calm as if it had never moved at all. The stars above were steady, watching with their patient brightness, and the sea below held them gently, like a cradle holding a sleeping child. Elowen walked back up the path toward her cottage. The village remained still, wrapped in slumber. Windows were dark. Doors were closed. The world seemed to be resting with her. Inside her cottage, she set the lantern down and let it go out on its own. The darkness that replaced it was not empty. It was soft. It was kind. It felt like a blanket. Elowen lay down, her body sinking into her bed, as if the mattress were made of clouds. She pulled the covers up and let her eyes close. In her mind, the sea stars still drifted, slow, shimmering points of gentle light moving across dark water. The image was soothing, repetitive in the best way, like waves that never need to hurry. Her breath was slow now, quiet, easy. Outside, the ocean continued its patient rhythm. The tide moved in its own time. The stars above shone on, unbothered, serene. And somewhere out there on the open water, the sea gathered soft, fallen light and carried it, rocking it, letting it rest. In the cottage, Elowen's thoughts became fewer and softer, like feathers settling. The edges of the world blurred. The sound of the sea turned into a hush, then into almost nothing at all. The night held everything gently. And you too can be held gently. Let your breathing stay slow and comfortable. Let your body feel heavy in the best way, as if you're sinking into warmth. The sea in your imagination is calm, and the stars on its surface drift without effort, without direction, without any need to arrive. The glow grows softer, the water grows stiller. Your mind can become quiet, like a smooth shore after the last wave has settled. Good night, dear traveler. Sleep well.